I see our role also moving forward to continue to evolve towards using more predictive analytics to guide and match and enable more relevant career paths.
For us as an industry, we must continue to be worker-centric and client-centric. That's got to be our mantra. We're operating with people, and as we're having interactions, certainly with governments and influentials.
I think from day one, and that is 1993, day one, we started in proving ourselves, proving that we are a good partner on the labor market.
And so I think the traditional methods that we use for career management, will also need to change to be effective in this kind of new world of work and the situations that companies are dealing with.
Inclusion, diversity, transition, and of course flexibility are keywords for the guests of this third episode. You'll hear the views of Richard Walkist, CEO at American Staffing Association, Martina Elfgren-Lilja, General Legal Counsel at Kompetensföretagen in Sweden, and last but not least, Muriel Antilles and Dan Davenport, both WC Career Management Group members. As usual, I leave you in the hands of Tom Hadley.
Thank you, Manon, and welcome to the latest edition of World Views on the World of Work. And let's start by taking stock and looking ahead at some of the emerging world of work trends and challenges. And let's start today in the US with Richard, and just to get your take on that. So what are you seeing in terms of some of these emerging trends and challenges?
Sure. So while there's a lot of talk about the new normal, I think that's giving COVID way too much credit for how it is going to change and displace the prior normal. I think that it means that we're going to have to get a lot better at the things that we were okay at and find new ways of doing things that perhaps we hadn't gotten very good at in the past. In terms of employment, clearly, we will have much more flexibility. There will be much more remote work. However, the big challenge that employers around the world are coming to grips with today is how does one create a culture that lends itself to being a differentiated and winning organization, winning association, winning government, if we're all working remotely. And the answer is it is not going to be done. So we're going to embrace technology. We are going to continue to see the acceleration of technology for our sector and all sectors. The challenge is going to be differentiating the wheat from the chaff as we're just bombarded by all of these new technologies. What are additive, what are potentially disruptive, and what are the ones that we have the capability and the competency to execute on to make a difference as we go into the next period of focusing on things like economic cycles as opposed to health cycles and pandemics.
Thanks, Richard. And isn't it great to see that things have moved on since our last podcast, especially with announcements on the vaccine? So let's turn now to Muriel. Interested to get your views on sort of current world of work evolutions. What are you seeing?
Thanks. In general, I would say I see a real evolution towards an era with human-centered workplace in the longer run, with some challenges for the short run as companies are focusing on cost-efficient or cost-effective strategies with their workplace. But I also see an era of higher flexibility and agility, so need for flexibility and agility to integrate the human needs in its design and processes. What that means for career management is effectively, that's our work. We exist to provide people with opportunities and show the path, or help them recognize the path. So I think the career management is very much at the center of facilitating, enabling that journey for organization and workers in terms of how to match the two.
Thanks, Muriel. And let's turn to Dan. Can you give us, Dan, your take on some of the world of work changes, particularly how that applies to career management?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, some of the things that we're going to see in a post-COVID world relate, clearly to COVID, things like new ways of working, remote versus virtual learning, things of that nature, getting people safely back to work. And then I think some things in the post-COVID world relate to trends that we were already seeing to some extent are accelerating given some of the economic impact of COVID, or just the emergence of the role technology is playing in our kind of world of work. And so that's, new skill requirements that companies need to be successful, and the changing relationships that are occurring between workers and companies. I think all of those things, whether it's around skills, ways of working, or matching skills with needs for companies, I think the career management industry can play an important role in bridging all those things together and helping companies find a way to operate in this new normal.
Thanks for that, Dan. And let's hop over now to Sweden and Martina, and I'll reframe the question slightly in terms of what would you like to see happen in terms of world of work developments?
It would be the market, that everyone, the politicians, that the unions, that the society together understands the greatness of the industry, that we can provide the flexibility that we do need within because when we are hopefully soon enough in a post-corona situation, even though the businesses will start with small steps, and we can help them every step of the way until they are expanded and are on the basis they want to be. So to be able to do that, we need an understanding that we are the good partner in this.
That's great stuff. And let's move on now to our next question. And we'll stay with you, Martina, for this one. Is what do you see specifically as the outlook for flexible staffing?
I think this is flexible staffing. In the future, everyone should be working as a flexible staff, because as we see the next generations, they want to have fun for a lot of time, and then they want to work some, and then they want to have fun again. So I think we are a solution for that, and also for the older people that don't want to leave the labor market so soon, so they can combine a life with continued work, but within their own time limits.
Thanks, Martina. And that's really a great point about the benefits of flexible working arrangements for young people coming into the jobs market, yes, but also for more experienced people who want to stay active and engaged perhaps longer. So thanks for that. And let's hop over now to the US. Richard, it'd be great to get your take on that, the outlook for flexible staffing, but also, I guess, what it means for the services that your members provide to clients.
As I take a look at our sector, it has been on a path of evolution for decades. And that path clearly leads to our having a much more consultative relationship with our clients. We're looking to develop deeper partnership relationships that will be more recession-proof than the transactional kinds of relationships upon which the industry was based. And I am so very encouraged as I see companies of all sizes in all sectors develop that level of competency that they can actually go into their clients and help them with their short-term and their longer-term strategic planning. And in these days of uncertainty and short-term change, with their scenario planning. So I think that the industry has to be much more focused on helping clients with scenario planning and helping them with total talent management. Of course, that means that we have to become very, very good at it at home. And we have to be disciplined, and we have to measure how we're doing before we presume to be able to go out and market that kind of consultative advice to others.
Thanks, Richard. And that whole theme of providing a more strategic level of service to clients has been something that's come out of many of the conversations we've had over recent months. The question is how you go about that. And certainly there's a big role, I think, for national federations there to help their members in that respect. So we've really looked at the sort of staffing sector, temporary work. But Dan, let's come over to you and just to get your take on what's changing for the career management sector.
Like I mentioned before, we're seeing a lot of trends, in some cases accelerate, whether it's move towards more freelancing, more flexible work arrangements, or the movement from, what we've talked about a bit prior, which is, more of a skills-based economy versus the role-based economy. And so I think the traditional methods that we use for career management will also need to change to be effective in this kind of new world of work and the situations that companies are dealing with. So I think that's both the advice we're giving, because the situation's a bit different today than, say, it was 10 years ago, and the method by which we're giving the advice. So how we interact with individuals and how we interact with companies. I think you're going to see our industry change on all fronts to kind of adapt to this new world.
Thanks for that, Dan. And that's a really strong message around the potential for change going forward in the career management sector. So let's come over to you, Muriel, and hear your views on perhaps some of the more recent developments that will hopefully create the platform upon which some of that change can be built.
We are still seeing, or we've seen a rapid increase in demand for our services, particularly in demand for external mobility. So, with that, we've had the opportunity and the chance to act as one of the digital enablers in the storm and providing the support in the format that is still required in these times of remote and online activities, but also providing a place where job seekers can get help to navigate that storm and that the shifting labor markets and change of industry. So I think one of the challenge is effectively to move from that can sound relatively transactional. And, I see our role also moving forward to continue to evolve towards using more predictive analytics to guide and match and enable more relevant career paths. And this is not something that can be achieved just by one single player or stakeholder. I believe it requires activation of the entire ecosystem, being policymakers, governments, unions or employee representations will be critical to work alongside public and private employment services to make this work.
Thanks for that, Muriel. And we're starting to look at some of the external drivers of change. So keen to build on that, Richard, with you and to get your perspective on the individual. So how are individual workers perceiving the world of work? Is that going to be one of the drivers of change going forward? What's your take on that?
So we've rethought work. I saw a meme the other day about people wishing for longer weekends so they didn't have to go to work on Monday. And it's the old, be careful what you ask for. You may still be going to work, but you're not getting up and leaving. And we found that that's not been good for individuals. It's not been good for companies and for cultures. Clearly, flexibility is going to be a word that is going to be absolutely bedrock for people as they're managing their careers. And I think that that's a very important consideration for people at all stages of their lives, and especially those that are about to enter the workforce. You are responsible for your career. You're in charge. And the good news is that if you have skills that are in demand, you will always be employable. If not employed, we will have economic downturns. But I think that for the world of work, every company in the world wants to be focusing on being on the right side of disruption. So they want to be the disruptors. They want to be involved in creative disruption, which means identifying and embracing and executing on innovation.
Thanks for that, Richard. And I think this point around taking real responsibility for your own career is a good one. And I guess part of that is knowing where to go to get information and support. And it could be speaking to a staffing firm, it could be getting advice and guidance from a career management expert. So I think these are all big themes for us to continue taking forward. And we've talked there a lot about some of the changes externally, workers, employers. Martina, just get your views in terms of what some of this means for the sector again. So again, looking on the other side of the coin, what does that mean for providers of HR services?
The future is all about specialization, to become more specific in what you do, what you offer, and why. To everything from the AI to whatever special orientation, whatever special service you would provide that and to get the young people out on the labor market, and that's what we really can help with now.
Thanks for that, Martina. And I like that idea of being really specific in terms of what we offer, whether it's to employers, to workers, but also to policymakers. So thanks a lot for that. And perhaps let's stay with that theme around real practical examples. And let's come over to the career management sector with you, Dan. So could you give us a few practical examples that really bring to life what your sector does and contributes?
Well, I'll give you a couple if I could. I think, clearly right now in the U.S. market, we're seeing a number of companies have to go through pretty significant restructurings to deal with the economic impacts of COVID. I think our ability to come in and help companies transition and restructure and move workers successfully and quickly from one industry to another to protect an employer's brand and help protect their workers and keep them employed, even if it's outside the company. I think we can play an important role there. I think, and that's a traditional role that the industry's played in a lot of different markets. But I think increasingly I'd give another, which is helping companies stay in balance. I think we have examples where we're working with companies that may have too many employees in one area of their organization and not enough in another. And I think there's an important role that career management companies can play to help companies bridge that gap, bring that balance. And we're seeing that need even more so in today's environment, just given the needs for companies to be more agile, to deal with these, just really the increase of change and the pace of change that's happening right now. So those I know you asked me for one, but those would be two I'd give.
Great stuff. And Muriel, could you come in there with some maybe other examples which really shine the light on career management and the support that you provide to employers, but also to workers?
So the first example would be around an organization in the tech sector with which we've been working for a couple of years now, and around the mindset of shifting from seeing their workforce as replaceable and moving towards a concept that is more of a renewable workforce, which means that they are effectively being able and to shift their investments between separation and what they invest in training and reskilling. They swapped it around in terms of the budget. So what they spend, they used to spend about 2/3 of their budget on separation and about 1/3 on reskilling and future-oriented training. And they were able to shift it around and spend not more, but differently. And with that, achieved higher level of engagement. The other example I would give is absolutely COVID related in the area of distribution, e-commerce, I would say airline / aerospace area, where we were able to bridge different organization with, on the one hand, those with high supply of workers, and on the other hand, high demand for workers at short notice, and to be able to build a bridge, not just purely from a process perspective, but as a human-centered process to work with the individuals, give them the choice and the awareness, the informed choice to move through and be able to remain employed, but also remain engaged in something that they can consider as a meaningful occupation moving forward is critical, and with that also supporting the companies on both sides, resilience, the one being able to reduce in size, and the others being able to very quickly hire the right type of skills that they required.
Thanks, Muriel, and some really great practical examples there. And I think what we're really focusing on here is impact, isn't it? It's the difference that we can make. And let's jump over to Richard in the US to get your views on the difference we can make on one of the most topical issues out there, which is inclusion and equality. So really keen to hear your views on that.
One of the upsides, and there are a number of them, of COVID has been to give us an opportunity to focus on areas where we've been lacking, and we've been giving lip service, but now is the opportunity for us to really affect change and action. During the midst of COVID in the United States, of course, we saw some tragic incidents occur leading up to the killing of George Floyd. This has spawned a series of events, not only on the streets, but most importantly within corporate boardrooms, of people taking a hard look and having difficult conversations, not only with their employees and their executives, but with outside experts about the state of race relation, around gender inclusion, around inclusion and diversity generally in the United States and across the world. And it's created a sense of a resolve and priority because it's the right thing to do, and it's also out of self-interest. We will only be able to grow as individual companies and as countries if we create truly equal opportunity for all citizens, where people are viewed as human beings, hard stop, without imposing any sort of other differentiators. For our industry, it provides a tremendous opportunity for us to continue to do what we have done through the industry's life cycle, which is to be the great assimilators. We can help people find opportunities that they might not be able to find on their own because of some of the prejudices and biases and barriers that have existed since the beginning of time.
Thanks, Richard. And that's a great turn of phrase, the great assimilators. I'll definitely be nicking that one. And there's no doubt that the global HR services sector can and is making change happen on the inclusion and equality agenda going forward. And let's stay with this idea of real practical examples. And Martina, turning to you in Sweden, let's look at things from on a sectoral level, and perhaps looking at the healthcare sector and the contribution the industry has made there over in Sweden.
Since there are, of course, people all over the long country of Sweden, remote places where you would not have a doctor or a nurse, but you would have people with corona, so they would need, they've pinpointed that they do need help with getting people to being healthcare people. So I think the health, but on the other, there is it's a very political issue within the public sector and the staffing. So hopefully this corona may shift the political view on healthcare staffing, health staffing. So and see that we do actually help very much, and we've done so much work during corona.
Thanks, Martina. And I know we've previously discussed one of the other drivers, which is, of course, the workers themselves. So healthcare workers who actively choose to work via an agency because it suits their lifestyle. It means they can control their hours. So again, that driver of change from the perspective of the individual is something we must never lose sight of. So let's go to our final question for today's podcast, which is a recurring theme, and it's the theme of repositioning the sector as we move into a post-pandemic era, hopefully. And let's start, Dan, with you looking particularly at the career management sector.
Well, there's a number of things. As I mentioned before, I think ensuring that, we are staying with the times and clearly articulating in companies that we understand the pain points that exist in this new normal we're living in, and the role that we can play there. But I'd say something maybe a little bit more tactically is that we all have to get increasingly more comfortable in a digital world. I think our industry just in general has been a mix, of course, of tech and touch, and it will continue to be. But I think as our customers continue to operate more increasing in a digital world, I think the career management industry has to keep pace with that, if not lead the way.
Thanks, Dan. And turning to Muriel, you've done an incredible amount of work to really raise awareness of the career management sector over recent months. Could we finish with just a final pitch and paint me a real vivid picture around what the career management services sector does and how it can contribute going forward?
Well, I'd say that we exist to provide, if you allow me the analogy, we are the compass in the storm, and with massive shifts in the labor market, we are there to provide orientation to help enable people access their own resources, to be able to recognize where the north is, and find a way to the coast to continue to exist and strive. And I think in those terms, we are enabler of the recovery, and I think this is a critical role moving forward.
Fantastic. And let's turn to Martina in Sweden. What's your take on the great repositioning agenda?
I think from day one, and that is 1993, day one, we started in proving ourselves, proving that we are a good partner on the labor market, a good partner for the businesses. And we've continued in improving that by having fantastic collective agreements, by having storytelling of what we do every day for the business. And we need to continue to prove ourselves. Actually, we need to be a bit better than everyone else, because we are a small market, but we have a huge potential, and that can be frightening for some. But if we show them that we're not here to sabotage, we're here to build something together. And I think that's the key, is to prove ourselves every day in everything we do.
Thanks, Martin. I think we can say that 1993 was a hell of a year, wasn't it? We had Bill Clinton taking office in the US. We had the Maastricht Treaty taking effect in Europe. A great year for the arts. So Groundhog Day, one of my favourite films, that came out in 93. I think also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out that year. Perhaps not quite so great. But 1993, what was one of the most important events was, of course, the birth of the HR services sector in Sweden. So thanks very much for that. Actually, 93 was also the year that we had the song by Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You. And I think from what you're saying, Martin, is we're not expecting people to love us all the time, but understand a little bit more about what we do and work with us. That would be a great start. And to conclude, let's go over to you, Richard, with your take on the repositioning agenda.
So the industry has an opportunity to lend its expertise to our leaders, business leaders and political leaders. We enjoy the unique perspective of having our fingers on the pulse of every occupation, every sector in the world. We need to do an even better job of data mining trends, and challenges, and opportunities, and share those with policymakers. We've talked about a few things at the World Employment Confederation over many, many, many years, including the opportunity to help policymakers rethink education agendas, and the role that our industry and indeed governments and private sector organizations must play in the upskilling, the reskilling, and the retraining of workers throughout their entire, I say work lives, but as we're living longer, throughout their entire lives. For for us as an industry, we must continue to be worker-centric and client-centric, and that's got to be our mantra as we're operating with people, and as we're having interactions, certainly with governments and influentials. Be proud of the contributions that we're making, and look for opportunities to contribute even more.
Wow, and that's a great note to finish on. A big thank you to all participants today. So Richard, Muriel, Dan and Martina. Some big messages to come out of today. I really enjoyed the focus on career management. It shows that the World Employment Confederation is a broad church. We touched on specific issues in healthcare, for example. That's an area to continue following up on. The role the sector can play in making change happen on equality and inclusion, and more generally this feeling that now is absolutely the time to seize the opportunity and to reposition the global HR services sector in what hopefully will soon be the post-pandemic era. So thanks a lot for listening. I look forward to catching up with you soon on a future edition of Worldviews on the World of Work.
You've reached the end of another episode of the Worldviews on the World of Work. You can subscribe for free to our podcast on iTunes or Google Podcast. Catch our next episode.